With Ramya when I came to California to think about the art form that I had been learning in Australia for much of my life, to see what meanings it was producing for Indian girls and women outside of the Indian context. And it was when I met her that I started thinking about all the other kinds of stories that were being forgotten while we're doing these dances about the gods and the goddesses that are supposedly 3,000 years old. And as I continued my research, what I uncovered was a fascinating history of American modern dance in which Indian dancers had actually come to the US in the 19th century and influenced the great mothers of American modern dance, including Ruth St. Denis, Martha Graham, and many others. And that back in India, Anna Pavlova had influenced Rukmini Devi, so-called mother of an Indian classical dance, and that there were these connections going back a long time. Once I figured this out, Ramya and I had also been working together for a great deal of time. I was learning these padams from her and also going back and forth to India. So my book actually began reflecting what was the past and what was also happening in the present. Why was she in the US teaching these dance forms to young Indian girls, and what were the meanings behind it? And our relationship is now 20 years old this August. So we've been working for 3 years trying to think about how to make the book accessible in performance form, once again, using the aspects of Indian classical dance, but using postmodern choreography to do it. We've been working together with Susan Rose, my colleague and our friend who lives in the US, but unfortunately was ill and couldn't be with us today. She's quite a well-renowned choreographer. And she's been working with us to see how we can make these stories more accessible. So it was really wonderful that Leo from the Corso invited us here to do a 2-week residency to continue building on these short performances that we created to see what we would come up with. And so we're very pleased to be able to share it with you today. And we would love to answer any questions or comments or thoughts, and what you thought about it, and if you've seen Indian dance before, what was different or similar to what you had expected. Now, I know you were going to go to a physical theater performance, and this was not that. So, given that you had to change your time today to see something else, we're very happy that you could join us.
And this is just a work in progress.
Yes.
We're in the process of...
In case they didn't tell you that already 10 times. We're still working out the details of how to move this forward.
When did you start?
Well, this piece,
Except for the 40 years ago.
yes. Well,
Here,
This
in the course of.
Corso was just a week.
Monday, last
Yeah.
Monday.
Oh.
Did you invite somebody who is already in this field in Holland?
No. This was our project that we've been working on, and because I live in Holland now, and I come and do performances and lectures here at the Corso, so I was invited to bring her and also my other colleague from California, Susan Rose, here to do that. But I am familiar with the Indian dancers and the scene here, and in fact, hopefully at the 5 o'clock event, which is when we were supposed to be doing this, we have several Suriname Indian dance teachers who are coming to attend and would like to see what we're working on, and some of the postmodern choreographers who work in Indian dance, Kalpana Raghuraman, who many of you whose work you might have seen, some of her dancers will be here as well. So we are having these kinds of conversations to begin.
Are they invited as well?
Oh, you can come again. You'll see this show one more time in a different iteration. I can't promise what I'll say next, though, or what we'll do next time. But the framework would be quite similar.
Because I'm thinking you have the tradition, which was very high standard, and to make it more easier to follow, you could say, oh, we make a simpler form, and although it might be very bad to not do exactly the original form, it is a way also, like you say, the way modern dance is being influenced. But for us, it's already already different to do both eyes and eyebrows and hands and feet together. So, but we can learn a lot from it.
Thank you. I think I just wanted to clarify though that the Indian form that we normally, or Dutch audiences might think, is actually quite old, 3,000 years old, traditional, classical, is actually only about 50 years old. And the woman that we showed earlier, Rukmini Devi, was a theosophist from the Theosophical Society, where, because you know the British colonized India, and the Theosophical Society was set up there, and there were people like Madame Blavatsky and so on and so forth, who were very influential in the Indian independence movement. And Rukmini Devi was married to a theosophist, George Arundel. And what happened with her being part of the Theosophical movement is that she got to travel around the world quite a bit. And she met Anna Pavlova. And she actually started learning ballet before she knew any Indian dances. Because the Indian dances had all disappeared by this point, the traditional forms. That's a very different history about why that happened. But she then learned ballet first and wanted to become a ballerina. Anna Pavlova told her, no. You have enough traditions in your country to go figure that out. Why don't you go figure it out? So she went to the temples, and she didn't like what she was seeing. She felt that the dance form was not to her taste, not to let's just say it was not to her aesthetic taste. So what she ended up doing is bringing the male gurus of the female dancers in the villages to Madras, to the city, Chennai, to the urban center, and created an institution called Kalakshetra, whereby the dance that had been done in the theaters, in the temples, and in the courts of the Maharajas, the kings, and on streets, and in homes, was then brought to a Western theatrical environment. Lights, costuming, makeup, design, all these elements were put in. And the first pieces she created, she called the Ramayana ballet, the Mahabharata ballet. They were all called ballets because she was very influenced by the idea of dance drama. Over a period of 15 years, when India got its independence, she shifted the word and took the word ballet out of it, and it became Indian classical dance for a number of reasons. Partly because Indians wanted to say, we have not been colonized, we don't have anything to do with what the British did to us, and the only way we can maintain cultural continuity is by saying that our forms are 3,000 years old, that we have had no interruption to our heritage and culture, we're not modern, we're pre-modern, we're backward in time.
Was it also more female sort of dance and male form of dance?
Mainly female practices that we are talking about, although there was some forms in India where men were performing.
But most of the gurus were men though.
Yes. The men were the men were the gurus, and the dancers were usually women.
So they were just giving words for dance and never practiced themselves?
Exactly.
So in my case it was. Actually is very interesting because I mentioned my guru was a musician and he came from the village to Chennai to be a singer for dance performances and worked extensively with a very renowned guru singing. And by just watching, learned the form, and then he broke away from his guru and started teaching dance. And so when I learned, it was completely verbal communication, never demonstrated, never got up. And I don't think he ever did one step never even stopped his feet once in his life. But he could just say, and I don't remember, it's been I don't remember. It's been many years since I learned, and when I teach my students, I wonder, how the heck did he teach me without even getting up and more than him teaching me, how the heck did we learn, you know? And there were so many social restrictions. I mean, I have to constantly tell my kids, tuck your bum in, don't sit like this, but sit straight. They couldn't even say things like that. They couldn't physically even come and touch us. So I'm really intrigued. Unfortunately, there's no video or anything, and the whole scene has changed now. I mean, it's different in India today.
But you were afraid of him, so you heard him saying, tuck your bum in or whatever.
No, my teacher was not the scary one.
Mine
It's
was.
hers.
And he would touch us. For sure, yeah.
It was quite different because her teacher was not from the Devadasi family. He was not from a traditional dancing artist family. He was a performer. Whereas my teacher came from the tradition. He never learned dance, leave alone perform. So it was quite a difference. And I learned one-on-one. He came home and taught me at my house. I didn't go to his institution or school. So our learning methods were quite different, very different.
Mine was from the Brahmin woman, Rukmini Devi, the Theosophist. That was a tradition that my teacher
Lineage, yeah.
came from. He learned from one of her students from that Kalakshetra institution.
So he made steps.
His teacher also didn't move.
Oh.
His teacher also did only said the syllables and the steps, and so he responded to that. But by that time, there was a system in place that you do this, then the next step is this. There's no deviation. Whereas when she was learning, she could fill in the blanks as she felt like it, how she wanted to. There was a lot of room for improvisation in the forms that she was doing. And that's really one of the questions that we're asking is, by relegating these so-called classical forms as being fixed and somewhere over there with no accessibility here, it's some weird culture, it's got nothing to do with us, we're trying to say, well, what if we could convey some of these questions in a different way? What if we could talk about power that's inside the classroom as a way to rethink questions that everybody could relate to? It's already in the form. It's not like we're having to deviate from the form to do what we're doing. We're just shifting things that you would normally not see in a performance, because the performance is so linear and uninterrupted that you, as an audience, are very much forced to sit still, both in the modern contemporary forms and to a large extent, and in the classical form. The audiences don't really respond except to say bravo, or everything is so internal. But one of the things we wanted to really try and bring out is, what if there's more interactivity with the audience itself? How would that shift how you understand what's going on, or how you engage with the form itself?
And you would play on to that if you feel that the audience is catching on, that you would maybe follow.
We would
Yeah,
make it
right.
harder
Yeah.
and harder depending on who's in the audience. So we performed this parts of this in India, and we do it quite differently there. With in Chennai, in the heart of where the form is being practiced, we were scared that we were going to have rotten tomatoes thrown at us when we came and did parts of this. But we were really surprised. People were so excited. They were like, wow, we never thought that our form could actually do this in this way, that you could do this kind of history and memory simultaneously. That's the thing that really got to them. How you're actually using the form to do other things than just tell the stories of the gods, if you will. So it's been really interesting. I mean, if you have further feedback, please, if you feel like it's too formal a setting to talk to us like this, we'll be right here. Come tell us more about what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Otherwise, you can leave if you wish, and you can come back again in about 10 minutes if you want.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. And I think what's really interesting about what we're trying to do is to say, well, how do we not do something that is so linear and just narrative, where we can just be like,
Because you say this means it's like
mind.
Yes. It's dance theater. Yeah. Our training is in Bharatanatyam, which is from Tamil Nadu. Yeah. Kathakali is mostly dance theater, kind of like staging opera. Yeah, it's very much more stylized than what we do. And what we do is mostly solo. And